What's up, YouTube? It's me, Kruppenbacher. Students, you can call me Mrs. K. This video is going to be about AP Statistics, Chapter 1, Lesson 1. Alright, so welcome to our first lesson of AP Statistics. Before I get started, I just want to point out that there is an introduction video that goes along with this course. So I want to make sure that you know that that's out there. And on the introduction video, it's going to explain to you what kinds of materials I'm going to be using, where to find these materials, what other tips and tricks that I recommend in order for you to be successful in your AP Stats class. So go ahead and check out that intro video. It's really going to help you understand what I'm trying to do with these YouTube videos. I will also link it down below so that it's easily accessible. So before we get into nitty-gritty AP statistics stuff, I just want to talk about why statistics, okay? Basically, statistics is a branch of mathematics. Statistics is literally everywhere, all around you. You can find data anywhere. In fact, we have so much data, we don't even know what to do with it. Statistics deals with the collection, the analyzation, the interpretation, and the presentation of masses of data. And in today's world, we have tons and tons of data that's out there. And we have statisticians who take a look at all that data and then tell the companies what they need to do or what they recommend based off the data that we have. Statistics is pretty much used in every field that is out there. Like, for example, off the top of my head, medicine, right? Everything in medicine should be database. They should have done a well-conducted experiment in order to be able to prescribe you medication or vaccines or whatever they're, inputting into your body. So basically what they do is they create experiments to figure out how effective the medication is and who the medication should be for, right? They separate them by gender, age, or nationality, or whatever. In medicine, they want to look at these things long-term so that they know what the side effects are, not just at the beginning, but maybe what could happen in a year, 10 years, 5 years. Another place that statistics is used is any kind of business, really. So restaurants. When I used to work at restaurants, managers would always look at data in the previous years in order to know how many servers, hosts, bartenders, cooks, bussers that they need to have on shift. They also look at what times of the day is busiest. That way they know when to bring their servers in and when to let them go by. And it could also be used for products, right? They should be collecting data on all the food that sells or doesn't sell. That way they know where they should be spending more money and in turn make more profits. Another place that heavily uses statistics is insurance companies, right? They need to know what is the probability of a 21-year-old boy dying. I read this somewhere in a textbook and they mentioned something like 21-year-old boys, their life insurance, it has a higher premium because, at age 21, I'm thinking, all right, maybe they're in college, they're probably partying more and getting drunk and whatever. So if you want life insurance and you're a boy at 21 years old, premium for that is going to be a little bit more expensive than as if you weren't a 21-year-old boy. And they use all the data from the past to determine how much they should charge for insurance so that they're making a profit, right? Because they're going to have to pay people out. Like if people get into a car accident and, knock on wood, someone gets into a car accident and passes away, then they have to make payouts, right? People are going to make claims and they have to pay off those life insurance premiums. So that's another company that uses statistics on a daily basis. So my point is that statistics is everywhere. Literally all around you. So that is why this course is going to be important. It's obviously the intro to statistics, so we're going to cover a lot of the topics that are just kind of scratch on the surface. Of course, statistics gets a lot more in depth as you sign up for harder statistics courses, but we will be learning AP statistics for the high school students who are trying to pass out of that so that they don't have to take it in college. So let's go over our learning targets. So today's learning targets are going to be identify the individuals and variables in a set of data, and we are going to classify variables as categorical or quantitative. All right, so statistics is a branch of mathematics dealing with the collection, analysis, interpretation, and and the presentation of masses of numerical data. We will actually be doing and learning all the parts of this. We're gonna learn how to collect data, we're gonna learn how to analyze data, then we're gonna learn how to interpret it, which is the hardest part I feel like for the kids. And then we're gonna present it using graphs and whatnot, okay? Okay, so next, let's talk about what an individual is. So in English conversation, we use the word individual to describe a unique somebody, right? So I am an individual. My husband is an individual. We're individuals. You are an individual. Okay, in statistics, it's a little bit different. Okay, and this happens a lot. So there are words that mean something different in statistics, and then in the real world, it means something different. I will point them out as that happens. But one of those words is individual. So in AP statistics, individual could be people or objects included in the study. Okay, so basically an individual in statistics could be a person, but it could also be things. It could be non-living things that are included in the study. So it typically is whatever it is we're collecting data on, whether it's people, whether it's cars, whether it's medical records, it could be plants, it could be animals, whatever we're collecting data on, that's the individual, okay? So there's gonna be two types of variables that we're gonna be going over. It's going to be categorical or it's going to be quantitative. I'm gonna skip identifiers for a split second because I forgot to switch them. But a variable is a characteristic of the individual to be measured. Okay, so a characteristic of an individual. So whatever we are collecting data on, let's say cars. A variable about those cars could be the color, the type, whether it's a van, sedan, truck, maybe number of miles, maybe miles per gallon that it gets. Those are all the different variables, characteristics of our individuals, if our individual was cars. And all those things that I just listed, color, model, type, miles per gallon, mileage it has, those can either be considered categorical or quantitative, and we're about to get into that. Before we do that, I want to talk about what identifiers are, because when you are presented some data, it'll give you all these things, okay, and then they'll probably ask you which are categorical variables, which are quantitative variables, but there is sometimes an identifier, which isn't really either, isn't categorical and it isn't quantitative, but an identifier is really a label for the individual of interest. And I will give you an example of what that is. It could be a name, it could be a number that represents each kind of car, whatever. A categorical variable, sometimes people call this qualitative to match with the other variable, quantitative. In this course, we pretty much just know it as categorical, right? That's all we're really gonna call it. But just in case, I want you to know that it could also be called a qualitative variable because we were looking at qualities of something. But in this class, I think we pretty much use categorical, but just in case it comes up in your course as qualitative, then that's the same thing as categorical. Qualitative, opposite of quantitative. This is defined as a variable that describes data that fit into groups or categories. Groups or categories, right? That's why it's called categorical variables, categories. So some example would be like eye color. Are your eye colors black, brown, green, blue, hazel? It could also be gender or race, ethnicity. Age group, okay? And notice that I'm putting group on there. That's important because if we're just talking about age, then that becomes really just quantitative. But if you're grouping them all together, then that becomes a categorical, right? You're grouping them into this group. These are all your infants, your toddlers, your children, your adolescents, your teenagers, your adults, your senior citizens, etc. Sometimes other books call this numerical variables, but really we're only going to be using quantitative. And this is data that are numerical and represent some kind of measurement. Oops, I write too big. Represent some kind of measurement. For example, we've got height, we've got weight, right? These are all like numbers that we collect. Miles per gallon, etc. A good rule of thumb that I've heard that I think works is whether or not you can take the average of something. Because just because something is numbers, you can't really just take the average of it. So for example, zip codes. In National City, California, the zip code is 91950. Here in Eva Beach, it is 96706. So those are numbers, but I can't really take the average of the National City zip code and Eva Beach, Hawaii, 96706. Like what would an average of that number even mean? It doesn't mean anything, right? So just because something is a number doesn't necessarily mean you can take the average. But if you could take the average and it makes sense, then it's an indicator that it's probably a quantitative variable. All right, so we're gonna do an example. I'm gonna read it with you. In AP Statistics, there's a lot of word problems. I know a lot of us went through all our high school math classes hating word problems pretty much and fractions. In AP Statistics, it is heavy on word problems. In fact, pretty much all the problems are word problems. So you do need to know how to read, do know how to understand your reading, and I'll be very honest with you, I wasn't a strong reader when I was in high school. In fact, math was my stronger subject. So I will model to you how I will be reading this and what kind of things you should be thinking about in your head, okay? Luckily for you, I made up these problems, so hopefully they're interesting. But let's read. So example number 1. According to Wikipedia, Turo is an American peer-to-peer car-sharing company based in San Francisco, United States. As of 2020, the company has 14 million members and 450,000 vehicles listed, operating in over 56 countries. The Kruppenbachers, okay, me and my husband, became aware of the car-sharing company and decided to join the Turo journey and become hosts. For each trip completed, the Kruppenbachers have collected some data and are displayed below. So this table right here has data that I collected on trips completed. Okay, so that's one thing that I want you to know. When you're reading the story, it's telling you what the story is about. There was a lot of fluff in the beginning, and I put numbers in there on purpose because that's what us teachers like to do. We like to give you distractors. So the whole story is about me and my husband renting our cars on Turo. Everything else, all that mumbo jumbo, was pretty much like nonsense. For each trip completed, it's telling you for each trip, that's what I collected data on. Okay, it says the Kruppenbachers have collected some data and are displayed below. So each trip, okay, keep that in mind. Now, I want you to look at all this data and I want you to do 2 things. First, I want you to identify the individuals in the data set. What are we collecting data on, okay? So we already went over the definition on what an individual is. It's not necessarily a person. It's whatever we're collecting data on. So I need you to figure that out. 2, what are the variables? And I want you to classify each as categorical or quantitative. So once you figure out what we're collecting data on, I want you to figure out what kind of variables we were collecting data on, and then I want you to classify them. Are they categorical or are they quantitative? Okay, so I know it's our first lesson, so I'm gonna keep repeating some of the norms that I want you to get used to. I need you to pause this video and I want you to do the problem. I want you to press pause and do them. The video that you're watching is gonna continue in 5 seconds, right? But I want you to pause and I want you to take more than 5 seconds to reread the story, figure out number 1 and number 2, and then you and I, we will compare answers, okay? So you're gonna pause in 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome back. I hope you actually did pause the video and try it yourself. Otherwise, you're really just receiving information. You're not really engaging in this video, okay? So number 1, I hope you figured out what the individuals are, and I even highlighted it for you in the very beginning. A lot of problems, they'll tell you what the individuals are. We went to the mall and we stopped random people. Those random people are the people that you are collecting data on, okay? So usually it'll tell you in the problem, you just gotta look for it. So identify the individuals in the data set. What were we collecting data on? I hope you said the individuals in the data set are completed Turo trips. And I didn't mention this before I asked you to do the problem because I hope you caught it. One of these topics, there's car, reservation ID, daily fee, number of days, miles driven, location, trip total, taxes and fees, total earnings. One of these didn't count as categorical or quantitative. Did you figure out which one it was? I hope you did, because the answer is reservation ID. The reservation ID was not an actual variable we were collecting, right? This is not categorical. And this is not quantitative. If you took all those numbers and took an average of them, it gives you what? The average reservation ID number? No, that reservation ID number is just telling you, all right, this is that trip. This reservation number is the next trip. This reservation number is the third trip, right? So those are all just identifiers, which is something that we did cover in the page before. Identifier, okay? So are the reservation IDs. So it doesn't count as either categorical or quantitative. For number 2, this might be the only place that I think it's okay for you not to write a full sentence is if you're listing things like this. We are going to classify them as categorical or quantitative. Let's go through the list. Car, categorical or quantitative? I hope you said categorical. So car. I probably put car type. Daily fee, that will go under quantitative. Can we take the average? Heck yeah, we can take the average daily fee. That's a good measurement of center for all the daily fees. So daily fee. Number of days, definitely quantitative, right? Take the average number of days, the average length of trip. Miles driven, another quantitative. Location, that is not quantitative. That will be categorical. And then trip total, taxes and fees, total earnings. Okay, I think it's kind of obvious that all those are quantitative. So we're gonna put trip total, taxes and fees, and total earnings. Also, I am going to point out that when you list the categorical or quantitative variables, I remember in my class, I made the kids put units on your quantitative. So don't forget to put your units. So I'm gonna write right here, don't forget to include units. Okay, so I'm gonna go back and go through all the units for this. So daily fee, right? That's in money. That's the unit. Number of days. That's days. Miles driven. That is miles. Trip total, taxes and fees. Those are all dollars, right? Those are all measured in dollars. Sometimes you want to know feet, centimeters, inches, all that stuff. You want to put all those units there, okay? All right, so we just finished our first lesson. Let's just go over what we just did, okay? First, we talked about why statistics was important, okay? Why are we even taking this course? And then we started to learn things like what are individuals, what types of variables are there? There's categorical variables and then there's quantitative variables. Sometimes you're gonna have information on it that doesn't fall under quantitative or categorical. So you have to make sure to look out for that. And that sometimes will be called the identifier. The identifier is just there to tell you what the label is for each individual that you're collecting data on. Now, I have been struggling with what to do with homework, whether or not I even wanted to assign it. I mean, I don't really care, I guess, if nobody does it, but I guess I should do it for those that don't have a teacher and want to practice what I just taught them. And there's a lot of other resources out there that you could probably go do the homework on, but just in case, and also to give me something to talk about in the beginning of every other lesson, let's give you your homework. So as mentioned in the introduction video, I hope you watched it, Your homework assignments will be coming from StatsMedic. Okay? If you go to StatsMedic, and if you listen to me the other day, this should already be bookmarked in your AP Statistics folder on your computer. If you don't know how to access this, I will also link it down below. And you also have to go watch the introduction video that I keep talking about, okay? So 150 days of AP Stats Classic is where I'm going to be getting the worksheets from. Obviously, we're in chapter 1, so we're going to look up chapter 1. I want you to click on day 3, lesson 1.1, categorical data. And on here, you're going to find a worksheet. It says, how are your favorite classes related? Okay, so you're going to click on the PDF. It's going to download it for you. Then it's going to open up and how are your favorite classes related? Okay, so I only want you to do whatever we covered today, which is basically going to be number 2 and number 3. Number 1, if I actually had a class and we would be using this materials in class, I would actually have all my students go up there and pick art, music, physical education, foreign language, and technology. However, we don't have an actual class, not yet at least. We could eventually have an online actual class later. So I want you to skip number 1. Since I don't really have a class, I don't have any students to ask. So what I did instead was I posted up these options on Instagram. So I will share that information with you in the next lesson because that's when we're going to need it. But for now, I only need you to do number 2 and number 3. And again, I'm going to let you know that I got this poll off of Instagram, which I will share with you next class. Okay, so if we record your homework, at the bottom, I leave space for you to write down your homework. I want you to write down what your homework will be, which is going to be number 2 and number 3 of StatsMedic. This was lesson 1.1. How are your favorite class related? Okay, so that's your homework. So the next lesson that I will be dropping, we'll start covering number 2 and number 3 just to review what we did from this lesson, and then we're going to move on to lesson 2. Okay, I also left the space at the bottom for questions just in case like you had a question in your head and you're like, I don't want to type it out right now and disrupt everything. You can write it at the bottom where it says questions, and then later on you can type that into YouTube and hopefully I'll be able to answer you. Okay, so I want to thank you so much for being a part of my first lesson video. It's been a long time since I wanted to do this, so I hope it works out and I hope it becomes something big, and hopefully one day I'll be able to just launch my own math classes online. That would be dope. Okay, so thank you for watching. I hope to see you next class, and take care and have a good day. Bye-bye.